So in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a carousel for your Bootstrap 5 site. So I'm starting here in Photoshop because I'm going to be working with these images in my carousel. So these are images that are off of a stock photography site. They look pretty cool. So if you're assembling your images that you have, it's important to determine what size carousel you're going to have, and then ensure that your images are sized for the web. So if you're pulling something off of Unsplash, or you've got a really nice high-res beautiful image like this one here, you want to make sure that the load time is going to be good. There are certain JavaScript things that you can run on a carousel that will size those images within the carousel. However, I find it just a lot easier to make sure your images are sized the same size before you plug them in to a carousel. It just is faster and easier to do it in Photoshop than if you're trying to do some fancy sizing within your code. It just prevents a lot of issues from being had. So the way I like to do it, I'm going to open all my images here in Photoshop, and then I'm going to create a master carousel template that I'm going to size all of these in within Photoshop. There's a million ways to work this, so I don't want a lot of comments that says, well, I do it this way, I do it that way. I'm sure there's a different way that people do, like, make this happen, and it works. If it's working for you, then great. This is how I happen to do it to get all my images sized correctly. So I'm going to create a new document in Photoshop, and it's going to be for the web. So important things to note: that I'm working at a 72 DPI, that I am working in an RGB color space. So those two things are important because we are working for web. And I'm going to go ahead and make my carousel image as 1680 by 500 because I want my images to not take up the entire first fold. I want to have a nice carousel, but I don't want it to take up where I'm having to scroll to get to any information. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. There we go. There's a nice width and height. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this image over. I'm going to hit duplicate layer. I'm going to move it to that untitled one that I've got. Great. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. There's a million ways you can get these pictures over to that artboard. Again, this happens to be how I'm doing it, is just tabbing through and duplicating out of my layers panel. So now I can go in and I see there's all my layers in here, and then I'm going to size them. So I can size then to adjust the crop of the image as I see necessary for the carousel. I personally like doing it this way too because I have a lot more image that I can work with, so that I can adjust that crop and that fit as to where it's going to go. That one's looking good. I'm going to be a good person and name my layers. So this one is going to be named Lifestyle. Size this one. In this particular image, I'm going to crop her just a little bit more, and then I'm going to use the glorious and magical content aware tool to kind of extend beyond what I've got. I don't want to cut off her face. I don't want to cut off the dog too much. So I'm going to go ahead and marquee around this empty area, and I'm going to do a content aware fill. We'll see how well it does. Actually, not bad. Not bad at all. So now I've got a little extra there. I just try to not cut off people's faces when I'm sizing this way. There's my lizards. They look pretty good for my exotic animals page. When you're selecting photos too, you would want to make sure that your crop works well for a carousel. Exotic animals. Need to rename this one. This one's for state of the art. Size her. This one is for vaccinations. And this one's for fish. I may also adjust the background a little bit on this guy just because I want to get a little bit more of his face and some of his fish in the bowl too. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab my just rectangular marquee tool here. I'm hotkeying its edit object fill, which is Shift Command 5 or Command or F5. Content aware. Content Aware does a really nice job on pattern backgrounds like this. All right, and now I'm going to just save each of these out. Call some fish. So I'm going to go ahead and export all of these out. So I'm going to do File, Export. Because these are photos, you want to save them as JPEGs. That's what JPEGs are for. So they are not meant for, these don't need to be PNGs or anything else like that. So a couple ways I can do this. I like doing the Save for Web just to take a look at it if you're not familiar, where you can actually see the difference in your quality on your JPEGs. So I can save this at 80% makes it 200K. I think I can go all the way up to 100 on quality. And that makes it 500K. That looks pretty good. I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to navigate this to my Southwest Vet site that I'm working on, and I'm going to put it in my images folder. So because I want to keep my images organized, I'm going to name it Carousel, and I'm going to call it Fish. Great. That one's saved. I'm going to turn that layer off, turn this one on, and work my way through this. I'm going to pause the recording and get them all saved, and I'll see you over in the code. All right, now we're back in the code here, and you can see within my project I now have images for these JPEGs hanging out in here, so I want to make sure that all of those are in the file correctly. So now I'm going to start building my carousel. All right, so back in the code here, at the end of my nav, I'm going to go ahead and create this carousel. So first thing I need to do is create a div, and it needs to have, I'm going to give it an ID of carousel. And I'm going to give this a class of carousel and then slide. So slide will slide picture to picture, right to left. There's also carousel fade. that will fade picture to picture. And then I'm going to set the data ride, data bootstrap ride is equal to carousel. All right, close that div, open it up here. Go ahead and minimize this window just for a second, just so I can have a little more space to code. And I'm going to go ahead and create my carousel indicators. Because I've got 5 in here, I need to account for that. So I'm going to create a new div. I'm going to give it a class of carousel indicators. And inside that, I'm going to create a new button. And it's going to be a type of button. I'm going to go ahead and take out the name of it so I don't have so many names. I don't need that. And I'm going to give it data, bootstrap, target. And that's going to go to the ID, which we set as carousel. I'm going to actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to change the ID to be, let's just say SW vet, just so for Southwest vet, just so it's not, we're not repeating the words carousel a million times where it gets confusing. Probably is a better way to do it. And then, so I'm going to target that SW vet. And then I'm going to set the data slide, which is data bootstrap slide to. And then I'm going to start with 0 because it's JavaScript and it's calling the JavaScript, so we have to start with 0. And then you need to set this to a class of active. If you don't set at least one of these to be the active one, nothing will show. It's usually the first one. You can set it to really any of them, but ideally you would like it to be the first one. So because that looks pretty good, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that a few more times so I get all 5 of my indicators. So I'm going to highlight, copy, and paste for 2, 3, oops, hang on. Let me hit a return here so I can 3, 4, 5. And so make sure to change your 2, 3, 4. So I have 5 indicators, and I'm going to take the class of active off of everyone but the first one, because I only need one to be active. You don't want them all to be there. There we go. That looks good for my carousel indicators. So let me go ahead, because there are a lot of divs when you start building this, I need to comment out and remind myself to comment often that this is end of indicators. So now that I've ended those indicators, now I can create the actual slideshow itself. So I need to create a new div. And that is going to have the class of carousel inner. And then I can start placing inside this inner carousel. There's actually 2 parts to a carousel, the outside and the inside. The inside is where all the stuff is at. So inside that inner one, I'm going to create another new div. I'm going to give it a class of carousel item. And inside there, I'm going to add my image tag. And now I can source that. So I'm going to source my images, carousel. I'm going to start with my lifestyle one. I'm going to give it an alt text of, I'm just going to call this featured image. And then I'm going to give it a class of dblock. So that sets it as a block level item, and then a width of 100. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's check it out. Actually, before I do that, I need to make sure this item is set to being active. Otherwise, nothing will show. Save that. Now I can look at it. And there I've got a broken link, but it's there. So let's go ahead and figure out where I broke my link. Figured it out. .jpg. There it is. There's my picture. Great. Always helpful to have that picture. So there's that. Let's go ahead and keep building this carousel. All right, so at the end of this one, go ahead and remove that just real quick. So I've got one picture in. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to paste it in 4 more times because I have 5 pictures. So 3, actually 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need to remove that active class from everything but the first one. Whichever image you want to show as first is the one that's active, and that's also the one you should set typically to 0. Like I said, you can set which one you would like. I feel like the first one, it's just easier to keep track of. So then I'm going to change this from lifestyle to, I'm just going to go down the list, exotic for my exotic pets, lifestyle of fish, call this one vaccine, and this one is state of the art. Save that, refresh, and let's see if it starts sliding through. There we go. Oh, we have a problem with that one. Broken image. So state of the art works, vaccine is not working. Oh, because I did an underscore there. It's always good to check while you're working your way through. Test often, because that's when you see problems. There we go. Now it's showing up. Awesome. So there's my carousel. The images are sliding through. Great. If you're hovered over your carousel, it will not slide. If you're away from it, then it will start sliding. So just kind of be aware of that. That's a part of that JavaScript. So, all right, now we've got that going. Let's go ahead and fix this up a little bit. I'm going to change my alt text for all of these. Instead of featured image, I'm going to say exotic animals. I'm going to say fish care for the fish. Call this vaccine clinic. And then for state of the art, I'll say state of the art facilities. So something that kind of describes it, if that picture wasn't showing up, that I can still get that. So now the last part of this is to go ahead and place in my carousel indicators. So making sure I'm still within my, let me slide this back over just so I can see my code a little better. If you're not working on a big screen, you're going to do that a lot. So outside my carousel inner, but still inside my carousel, I'm going to go ahead and create my carousel controls. So I'm going to create a button tag. And I'm going to give it, I'm going to eliminate, actually I could name it previous if I'd like to give it a name. Or prev is always good. I'm going to give it a class of carousel control prev, which stands for previous. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm typing in the correct, there we go. Make sure I got my quotations around the correct way. I'm going to set my data target. So data target, data BS target is that target we set, which is Southwest Vet. So I'm going to do the # Southwest Vet. And then our data slide, data bootstrap slide is equal to previous. So it'll go to that previous slide. So then inside that button tag, I'm going to go ahead and have it place the bootstrap icon, which I will add a span tag for span. And that class is going to be the carousel control prev icon, and that will give you the icon for the previous, the little kind of left caret. So get rid of that ugly double tag that's popping up here. So now that I've got that button, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and then just change it to be next. So I'm going to copy all of this and I'm going to paste it. And now every time I see the name prev, I just want it to be next. So that way it'll go on the other side. Next. Data slide 2 is next. And then instead of the previous icon, it is the next icon. So you just need to change it every time you see that. I'm going to go ahead and save it. I refresh in my browser here. And there I can see there are my icons popping in here. And that looks really nice. So make it a nice big window so you can actually see what's going on. There they are. That looks very, very nice. Cool. So double check that your carousel is working, your images are loading correctly, and that is the carousel for my site. So on the next video, we're going to go ahead and start populating some content within the site and working with cards and other items. So thanks for watching this one. I'll see you on the next one.